Who is the most underrated actor of all time?
It's Dolph Lundgren.
Correct. Why?
Well, because of his spiky hair, and his ice-cold demeanor, and his big muscles.
Absolutely.
I must break you. The guilty will be punished.
My name is Sergeant Andrew Scott.
Come on, guys, don't do this. If I don't get breakfast, I get real grumpy. I don't think you like me grumpy. And you go in pieces, asshole.
Let's kick some ass.
Hello and welcome back to I Must Break This Podcast, the fan podcast celebrating the cinematic career of action legend Dolph Lundgren. I'm your host Sean Malloy, and on today's special interview episode, I had the pleasure of speaking once again with director, writer, and editor Alex Merkin. But before we get to the conversation, I wanted to remind you all to please feel free to rate and review the show on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever else you go to subscribe. We always appreciate the reviews, especially those 5-star reviews. Those always help. Also, please be sure to check out the Facebook page for the show, I Must Break This Podcast. Here you can stay up to date on the show, the career of Mr. Dolph Lundgren, and other news regarding action cinema in general. So if you're not already following the page, please feel free to like it, share it, and continue being a fan and helping spread the word. Lastly, if you'd like to get in contact with me with ideas, suggestions, or thoughts on the show in general, you can take a look at the official webpage for the show, which is imustbreakthispodcast.wordpress.com. Now, on to today's conversation. Recently, Alex Merkin was gracious enough to join the show once again and discuss his next upcoming movie, PUPS Alone. Now, if you listen to our previous conversation, PUPS Alone was still in post-production, and Alex wasn't able to say very much. But now, with the film slated for an upcoming release, Alex was much more open to discussing and divulging information on this wild, family-friendly Christmas comedy. In PUPS Alone, Dolph plays Victor, a conniving thief who hires some of his associates to steal a high-tech invention right before the holidays. Yet awaiting these thieves are a group of neighborhood dogs who've banded together to protect their owner's home.
Well, here we are. What do you think?
It has potential.
Yeah. What do you think, Charlie?
This is gonna be one rough Christmas.
Better step in line, mutt. Pups that don't last very long around here.
You must be Robert. I'm Holly.
Looks like our neighbors are getting cozy. Too cozy.
Do you think she's married? You should ask her out.
I'm Victor. The engineer pet tech assigned to a big secret project. How about you and I give the old man a hand? Let's get this a sec. What do we have here?
Oh, it's just a prototype and not a very good one. Hopefully, when it's all done, it will decipher a dog's thoughts into words.
A canine translator. That's brilliant.
Precisely.
Don't get too settled. We have vacation to think about.
Vacation?
Big Bear Ski Lodge, yearly company shindig. Everyone's going.
Why are you dressed like Santa Claus, huh?
I can't afford to look stupid. Need all of his research to check everywhere.
Toilets?
Everywhere!
Let's get the prototype first, and then we hit the rest of these godforsaken houses.
Oh no.
Heavy. Bad guys are coming tonight.
I have a plan that can help everybody, but we need to work together and put our differences aside.
That's it!
Hey! Oh, my werewolves!
done an amazing job with Jenna. She's incredible.
She is. She's everything to me.
You guys are the worst bad guys ever.
Is that all you got, Pop?
Yes, this is Dolph Lundgren as we've never seen him, and judging by the trailer, he appears to be having tons of fun as he's branching out and working in a genre that he's never truly been able to work in prior. Joining him in this film is a wild cast, especially those who are lending their voices to the four-legged characters, including Jennifer Love Hewitt, Malcolm McDowell, Danny Trejo, and Rob Schneider. In this conversation, Alex Merkin and I chat the development of the film in its pre-production process, as well of the struggles in putting this film together, particularly the wrangling of the film's cast of canines. We also discuss the film's long road in its post-production. We also chat Alex's contributions to the HBO documentary What Happened Brittany Murphy, in which he speaks openly about directing one of Brittany Murphy's final acting roles. That two-part series is currently available on HBO Max. Please be sure to check out PUPS ALONE, which will be given a limited theatrical release on November 19th, before dropping on video on demand and DVD on November 23rd. So, without further ado, is my conversation with Alex Merkin on I Must Break This Podcast. First of all, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me again. I really appreciate you willing to speak with me again. Thank you.
Of course. I'm happy to do it. Thanks for having me on. And so, how have you been?
I'm doing good. Yeah, it's interesting. You know, you guys have this movie PUPS ALONE coming out, and is it fair to say? Because I know last time you and I spoke, you were kind of you weren't really allowed to speak a heck of a lot about it.
Right.
I mean, the movie it's gearing up for a release here in a couple weeks. So,
yeah.
I mean, are you allowed to speak about it openly?
Totally.
Now?
Yeah, I can talk about it now. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was funny because we didn't, at the time, we had certain like names circling the. We hadn't done all the dog voices yet and things like that. So we had other names that were coming on board, and I wasn't sure what I was allowed to talk about, who was official yet. And there were, I think even if I had spoken about it at the time, there were certain people at that time that, for one reason or another, we ended up having to change. So yeah, it's good that we held out because there were a lot of things that were sort of up in the air, but yeah. Coming out in a couple weeks now. Yeah, so I think our premiere might be next week, or no, it's either next week or the week after. My brain, it is, man.
Yeah,
but yeah,
well, no, this is awesome. This will be a little some promotion for you here. There you go.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, before we get to PUPS ALONE, because I have quite a few questions about PUPS ALONE now that now that the cat's out of the bag and we're allowed to talk about it. But I have to tell you, it was awesome seeing you show up in the What Happened Brittany Murphy documentary on HBO Max.
Thank you.
I mean, it's interesting because, I knew that you directed her in one of her final performances, but it's funny because I turned on that documentary and I wasn't expecting to see you pop up. But yeah, it was great seeing you pop up. And I have to be honest, it was really refreshing hearing you just speak openly and honestly about the behind-the-scenes drama that occurred on set of that film.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you. It was, it's something that there have been a couple times where I've been asked to come out and talk. A few times I've done it, and I was like the actual program itself was a little less tasteful than I was happy with, you know what I mean? So because sometimes they do, not this one, the HBO, I thought this one was a fabulous, I liked the woman who made it. I thought her heart was really in the right place. I mean, she had a lot of challenges for sure. Her name is Cynthia Hill. She's a really talented filmmaker. And I got to know her, and I got to know, what she would call me and ask me a lot of questions, and just through what her focus was and what she was trying to. I also know like what a lot of the challenges she had was to put this thing together, and under the kind of scrutiny and the timeline that she had, and the things that when you do something like that, the things you're allowed to say, the things that you sort of start to uncover, that the rabbit holes you can't go down, or that legally you're stopped. And I thought she navigated all that stuff really well. So I felt really trusting of her, and so it's always a I would say it's emotionally taxing. You kind of start to open up old wounds and start to dig up things that you hadn't really, you kind of put away. And that was my first movie that I had ever made. So it was an extremely, like conflicting time, because there's such a huge mix of wild, not just emotions, but just everything. You're going through so many. It's such a huge, like a vast spectrum of like ups, highs and lows, and ups and downs, and it was an insane experience. But I appreciate that. Thank you for the kind words. It was also, I felt it was kind of therapeutic in a way. It felt like I was able to sort of get some closure on some feelings I didn't even realize I was still sort of holding on to. So,
well, I mean, it does. One of the many things about the documentary that I really appreciated is, I mean, it kind of reminds viewers, I mean, me especially, just what an amazingly talented actress she was, especially especially in comedy. I mean, right. I had shamelessly, I mean, I feel bad admitting this, but I had completely forgotten that she was in the movie Drop Dead Gorgeous. And right, yeah. the movie reminded me of that, and I went back, and she's one of the best things about that movie. She is absolutely hilarious in that film.
Absolutely, yeah. No, yeah, 100%. She was not she was such a unique talent, and it's true. I was always sort of, I mean, I've had obviously a very different experience with her. But she was so unique and so different. I mean, when we were casting that film, I can't even explain to you the laundry list of names that you start to go through of like it people and who's rising and who's hot right now and who's making waves and that kind of thing. The kind of names that kind of come across your desk when you're going through the casting process. And I would just find myself being like, not, when I would go through all these people, there was just such a blandness, or you find a lot of sort of like, you kind of see the sort of superficial reasons why these people are making waves at the moment, but there isn't really that quality that's going to, elevate or transcend anything, and as soon as her name came up, it was like, oh my God, yeah. Like she's such a unique talent. She's such a special talent. And, it is like, I think there's an aspect of what that process was, for her, which also made her feel a little more alienated from the sort of Hollywood community in a way, which sort of fed into issues and insecurities and problems and sort of like, I mean, this is one of the sort of nasty things about the industry at times, is that it can be very sort of cannibalistic, and it can sort of just magnify things or just paint things in negative light, that can ultimately just lead to the spiraling. If you're like not mentally prepared for how to withstand that kind of stuff, it can be very complicated. So my point is just that her being such a unique individual, not sort of just being like this like Hollywood robot that was sort of, painting by numbers and showing up to set to, do just sort of the generic thing that an actress is supposed to do in the role. I think that's what made her great in a lot of ways, and it also, I think, led to a lot of problems that ultimately ended up in that tragic way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, you already said it, but yeah, Across the Hall, that was your first film. Have you noticed, thanks to this documentary, have you noticed a kind of like a newfound rediscovery of Across the Hall? I mean, have more people been checking it out than before? Because I noticed that it's available on a few streaming services, one of which is Tubi, which is of course free. Have you heard about more people seeing it for the first time since then?
I feel like I've definitely seen a lot more activity in terms of, I getting contacted a lot more. I get a lot of people reaching out. It's hard for me to sort of track that kind of thing. It's been nice. Like when the movie came out originally, it came out amidst that whole horrible tragedy that was going on, and it was very difficult to. I mean, literally, we premiered the movie, and 2 weeks later, she passed away. Right? It's like we're just coming out in theaters, and we had a whole Sundance thing planned before that, and we were, it became this whole thing where like I didn't want to. I didn't want to let it become. I didn't want her death to be used to promote the film, basically. You know what I'm saying? I just didn't want that to become this sort of horrible reason that people were, or that was sort of the narrative. And I just felt like it would take away from, the tragedy of what was going on. It was just very complicated, and it's like you want to, of course, like this is my first movie and it's coming out, being released, and I'd have these cynical people who want to take advantage of the situation, and I was very reticent to allow any of that to take place. So all that to say that like when it first was released, it was released under this really sort of cloud of like insanity and chaos and ambiguity in terms of like what's getting attention for what reasons, and but over time I've also like there've been these sort of waves of people finding it and getting these sort of like moments of nice appreciation. So it's hard for me to know. Like it's probably true. I mean, she used a lot of footage from the movie. She used a lot of behind the scenes footage as well from the movie. So it is probably true that there's been somewhat of a new audience finding the film. I'm only able to really track like sort of the waves of attention that I'm just getting contacted a lot more. You know what I'm saying? So I'm getting a lot of random messages and things like that, which but that'll happen at times. Like I'll see that it happens in waves with sort of everything that I've done. Where I'll be like sitting at home and then suddenly I'm finding out something starts to trend in a certain way, and I'm like, oh, that's crazy. I didn't did that movie like 3 years ago, or something like that. You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm sorry. It's a long answer is probably, but I've only, and definitely I've seen a wave of attention. I haven't really put two and together, I guess is what I'm saying, and said, oh yeah, and that's also leading to more views. But I'm sure that it is.
Well, if we could, I mean, maybe it's best to say let's pull a 180, I guess. But I wanted to ask you about PUPS Alone.
So
sure, yeah.
Yeah, so this is pretty exciting. This is slated for a release on November 19th. Is that right? I know that's when it's coming to DVD and premiering on VOD as well. You know,
I think the 19th, is that a Friday? I think the 19th is theaters, and then the following Tuesday is the VOD. I believe.
Okay.
I could be wrong.
Okay. Well, what's so interesting about it is, I mean, yeah, looking at your resume, okay, PUPS Alone is almost a right angle to everything else that is on your CV. I mean, this seems to be the first family-friendly comedy that you've done. So I guess I have to ask, how in the heck did this project come your way?
That's a good question, yeah. So the producer of that film, a man named Brandon Burrows, who's also sort of created this film. It was his baby. He was actually on and a part of Altitude, and he was very excited with. He was actually one of that movie was a very difficult movie to make. We had a lot of hurdles with that film, a lot of obstacles, even in the producing space. But he was somebody who was one of the producers on that film that was sort of a positive, a constant sort of good force against a lot of other sort of chaotic and difficult forces. And so he was thrilled with what he had felt, the way he felt that I sort of navigated that storm and kind of come through a lot of very difficult things, and he definitely felt this movie was going to be a challenge, and he is also aware that I am a huge dog lover. I have a little, I say little, he's a 80-pound German Shepherd Husky mix, but he's my buddy, he's my best friend, he's I love that animal more than I love myself. So he was aware of that, and he also really was aware of sort of the good rapport that Dolph and I had on Altitude, and we had worked well together and had a good and this was going to be such a different kind of a role for Dolph that he, so all of those things he felt like he really wanted me to set to helm this, and I, and it was funny, I was actually coming off of like you said, I mean, it was maybe the other end of the spectrum. I was coming off of a very scary movie, a very non-family friendly, scary film, that I just filmed, and I had another one on my slate that I was getting ready to film, and he was very persistent and such a good guy, and he had done such a great job putting everything together on this film, that I could not say no to the movie, and the package that he sort of delivered to me. This was going to. I've always loved holiday films. I've certainly always wanted to do movies that that everybody can watch, but sometimes you get a little pigeonholed when you start making your name in one way. A lot of people sort of just see that kind of thing, and but I like every kind. I'm such a big fan of so many different types of movies that there's not really one thing that I just want to be doing. It's funny because if you ever watch like an interview with like Wes Craven, he didn't want to make horror movies. He didn't want to just do horror. He wanted to do lots of different things. He almost didn't want to do horror movies at all, or hated when he would be sort of known as the horror guy, which is just funny because people wouldn't really think that or know that about him. But we're filmmakers. We're often very big fans of everything, and so yeah. I would say the biggest thing for me was, on top of I absolutely love dogs, and I've secretly always wanted to do something like this. I would go to like those like Universal shows where they have like the super trained dog, and I grew up like loving that stuff. Home Alone is one of my favorite movies. So there's a lot of things like that. And to work with Dolph again, who he was, and also be involved in a movie where he was going to be doing such a different type of role for him, is such an exciting thing to be a part of, So I guess that's the long answer. The short, long answer.
Well, yeah, that's what I wanted to. I mean, look, for me personally, the big driving force for me wanting to see this, obviously, is Dolph Lundgren's involvement. Right. Because, like you said, this is completely different than anything he's ever done. I'm curious. Was he one of the first ones attached to this project?
100%.
Or did you get?
100%.
Was he really?
No, yeah, 100%. Yeah, so Dolph was actually. So I mean, that was actually one of the when Brandon called me. That was part of the I really would love, because I didn't know if I'd even be able to fit this in my schedule. It was literally, this is a year I made 3 movies and edited, and I was in post already on another one. So actually I might have filmed 4 movies that year. I either filmed 3 or 4 movies. That's how packed my schedule was, plus this, and I had a commercial schedule as well at the time. So it was a very busy year. So I was very excited about the idea of it. I just wasn't sure I was going to be able to do it. And Brandon is a very persuasive and persistent guy, and he goes out when he sort of targets what he wants. He doesn't just move on, But Dolph was part of the come on. We got let's get back in there with you got to do it. You got to come on and do this with them. This is going to be amazing. So yeah, he was already he was I think he was probably the first person cast in the movie, which is really exciting. It was, and he was so enthusiastic about it. He was so excited about it, which was also exciting for me because, it just shows me the experience I had with him on Altitude was that he's somebody who's coming to work and putting the time on the character, and really he's not showing. There's a lot of guys who they get the reputation for you'll look at Bruce Willis now and you'll see he's showing up in everything, and it's okay, they're showing up for a page. Literally, he'll show up in any movie for this amount of money, right? And shoot a couple days, and that's just not what it's not what he's doing. It's not what he's doing, and you never really know ahead of time. Dolph is extremely invested in the material he accepts and he takes part in. And for him to invest in this was, to me, that's sort of a make or break element of it, because it was not going to have, this movie was not going to have a big schedule, right? We were not going to have a lot of time to make it. We're going to have a lot of obstacles in and of themselves. So if someone like him in a role like that is just going to be sort of showing up and sort of, clocking in and clocking out, there's just no way that's going to work. It's just going to fall flat. If someone like him isn't fully invested in it, because there's a lot of silly comedy in the movie. And so you need actors who are going to commit to those. Who aren't going, yeah, this is silly and I'm above this. You know what I mean? That are looking at this and fully committed to the characters that are in those scenes, so that it isn't just stupid humor, that it's what actually makes it funny. It's the reason why it actually works. So that was a huge thing for me. He was excited, we were going through character notes and ideas really early on in the process, because he was very invested in it.
Well, and unfortunately, I haven't had the pleasure of having Dolph on the show yet. I'm holding out hope. I feel like it's going to happen eventually. But,
I'm certain it will. I'm certain it's going to happen. I'm positive. I will. I'm certain it will happen. I'm not going to make promises, but I'm feeling confident.
But everybody who I've spoken to, everybody from directors to screenwriters, everybody has said the same thing: is that he's a pro. Like, he is an old pro, and he shows up to set regardless of the size and the scale of the production. When he shows up on set, he delivers, and he's gonna, act his ass off and do his very best. And I'll admit, I'm gonna be completely honest with you, Alex. When I first heard about this project, that he was doing this, I mean, look, the guy's my hero, you know what I mean? And so when I heard about this project, I was a little hesitant. I'm going to be honest with you, because it's a Christmas comedy and everything.
Yep.
So I was
and there's such and sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but there is such there are so many movies that are made like this where they are paychecks and they are phoning in the humor and the everything is just sort of you can just tell this is let's make money off of this holiday, and I can tell you 1,000%. I'm not claiming that this is a perfect movie, because look, when you make movies, again, you don't have control over when you're filming something in the schedule that it would normally be just the pickup schedule for a normal movie. You know what I mean? You're filming in the amount of time that another movie, after they've already filmed their entire movie, goes, all right, we're going to spend this amount of time just getting everything we didn't get and cleaning up the movie, right? It's impossible to make a perfect movie and avoid, things like that. But I will say to you that there is no aspect about this that is a cash grab for anybody involved in it. No. There is no aspect of this movie that is in any way not whether or not if you're not into it, you're just not into this kind of movie. But it's not because anybody's phoning anything in. Do you know what I'm saying? This and you will be shocked at how good Dolph is. I mean, it's almost like you've seen Arnold do comedy, and you've seen these guys come in and do it, and it's sometimes it's successful. You get a John Cena or Dwayne, Johnson, and it's successful when you see that they can handle comedy, and sometimes they excel at it, right? But Dolph should have been doing this. I mean, I'm not saying that he should have changed his career and not been making the kind of movies he was, but I mean, he is so good at it. You have to be smart to understand where the comedy is. You can't just be playing comedy. You know what I mean? You can't just be playing I'm trying to be funny. You can't be winking at the audience and trying to be goofy. You have to understand where the humor in those things are, and how playing, and the levels to how to play these things. And he nails it. You just are going to be surprised at how good he is at this. Studio, everybody who's come on, Paramount, everybody who's seen it has just been wow, Dolph, that is just next level for him. It's actually, it's just not this isn't something he's done a million. You've just never seen him like this, and it's so good. I mean, that aspect is so good. I'm really excited for people to see him in this movie. I'm just really excited to see just what he does, and where he goes, and how he executes. He's so fucking funny. I'm sorry, pardon my language, but he is just he nails it. I'll just stop. I'm getting too excited. That's why I start cursing when I start to get excited. So I apologize. But like I was saying earlier, I was a little hesitant. It was kind of oh man, what? I'm going to be honest with you. I was thinking man, what is Dolph doing here? And then the trailer hit. Okay, and you and I were talking back and forth. When that trailer hit, I don't know your feelings on the trailer, but when I first saw that trailer and I saw
what was on screen and the performance that Dolph was delivering, those hesitations of mine were quickly eradicated. I mean, it appears just from that trailer, from that 2-minute trailer, that Dolph seems to be just having a ton of fun in this silly little movie, which again kind of goes back to what we were talking about, how he's a pro. He's, when he's on set, he's going to be he's going to be delivering, and it seems like with this particular film, he really wanted to deliver, and he wanted to do his very best, and that's evident from the trailer, man. I have to admit.
That's awesome to hear. Yeah, the trailer for me, trailers are always tricky for me because I'm almost never, like, when I always see a trailer, I'm like, I'll see things and like this. I see what I think it's. Sometimes I'm like, oh, it's better than this or this. But I'm really happy to hear that. I'm horrible at judging trailers anyway. But I'm thrilled to hear that you say that because it's 100% accurate. I mean, it's not even just that he fully committed to this. He was passionate about it. Like, he was passionate about it coming in. I mean, you can tell. I could tell from just even the meetings I was having with him, and how excited he would get, to figuring out aspects of the character and ideas, and this doesn't work. Let's figure out something, and we would go through and we'd be reworking things that, and coming with other ideas and new ideas and making things work. But like that is, it's almost a level up from just being a pro and being fully committed. It's like there was some, I don't know if it's some childhood like thing that he's fulfilling. I don't know if it's just a matter of like being so passionate about the idea of doing something that's a challenge and different for him, and it sort of awakened some kind of like creative spirit that is a muscle he hadn't exercised in a while or flexed in a while, but it was a level up. It was almost like you would almost think he was one of the creators of the film. It was that level of passion and excitement that he was coming, and that is, I'm telling you there is not just a trickle down effect in terms of like everybody else seeing that, but even for me as the director, just knowing that there is that ace in the deck, you can feel a little easier about the things that that you don't have the ability to do because of, you know what I'm saying? You can't build this kind of a set or do this or that, so you have to deal with this or you don't have. And again, for me also, it's like what do they always say to you? They, don't film with animals, don't film with kids, and those are two of the like three things you're just never supposed to do, right? And like I think the third one's like don't film in space, don't make a space movie, because those are the three things that are just like just slows your schedule so much. And we have 2 out of the 3 things on that list, and it was just such, everybody was just so happy. He was such a great energy and presence on set. And honestly, it's hard to articulate that it's a level up from just being professional. Do you know what I'm saying? Like there's a way to be professional and still treat something like a job, but this was a passion. You know what I'm saying? So. Yeah. He brought that, and that was such a, I think people are just going to, they're going to be really pleasantly surprised when they see him in this film.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like this film was in post-production for quite a while. Didn't you guys finish filming it in 2017? So, this film has been sitting for about 4 years now. Is that right?
Not exactly. Yes.
No.
We filmed principal in then. That's when we started to film. We didn't complete filming then. We always had more to film from the film when we completed. It did get a little tricky with everybody's schedule. With a budget where you're sort of, where you don't have the kind of money to sort of shut everything else down, you know, and say, all right, everybody else stop doing the other projects that you're doing. It's a little tricky to sort of get, when you have especially a cast this big with this many names in it, you know what I mean? When we did shut down, not to shut down, but when we finished Principal and then sort of regrouped to get started on the next sort of phase of the film, it became tricky to then I actually, as I said, I had a small window to make the movie, right? And then I had these other films that were already lined up and ready to go, so that's why I was already concerned about my schedule sort of fitting with this. Dolph was also off doing other things, and we had other actors in the film who were sort of had time commitments on other projects as well. So it was really like the biggest reason for the sort of time off between when we first shot the main portion of the film and when we sort of did the last couple of days that we were hoping to get done sooner was just getting everybody's schedule lined up. And so when it finally did, we were able to then just sort of take off and finish it. But yeah, that was really the big challenge, the big hurdle for, but thankfully, you know, again, if someone like Brandon he could be a producer who then just says, well, screw it, we're going to just, you know, take the shortcuts and do things the wrong way. Or he could be patient and lose money and try to do it the right way, and that's the kind of person that he is. It was his own money that he was putting into sort of trying to extend the schedule and make things work. And he did a really. It's rare that you find the guys who do that kind of thing. You know, you usually get the guys who are like, forget it. I'm not gonna. We're just gonna do the dumber version or the bad version of this, and this. We're not gonna, we're not gonna try to do it the right way. If that makes sense. So he really wanted to get everybody there at the right time and do all the things properly, and that was really, I would say that was the biggest hurdle. You know, but it worked out. So yeah, that's the reason why. You are right, though. It was a movie in the making for several years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we were talking about the obviously the post-production of this, and it sounds like, I mean, kind of going back to what we said about how Dolph is a pro. I mean, he did his ADR, you were saying, through Zoom, which I mean, I think what was it I messaged you about earlier? It's really kind of amazing, and again, speaks to his character, the fact that he's willing to do his ADR, even if it's through Zoom, as opposed to when you have a guy like Steven Seagal, or Bruce Willis for that matter, who will just have someone else dub.
Exactly.
It's ridiculous. But the fact that he did it through Zoom,
he will do it. Cool. Yep. No, he's great. That's he's doing it like literally while he did it from the studio of another project that he was in the process of making. He's like editing a movie he directed, and he was also performing in something. So he had all these. Yeah, I mean, it is amazing because I've definitely you know, there are people in this industry that are sound-alikes, and you know, it's even in their contract, like when you're going in to do ADR, because you know, that you're using people who sound like them sometimes. And Dolph he's not going to do that. He doesn't want anybody. And even if he's just coming in and it's just something small, I mean, if you had heard even just the Zoom sessions of it, because like there's a lot of, you know, there's like physical humor in this, right? So he's like reacting and making noises and doing things that are, you know, that feel very silly to do in a sound booth. And he is just, again, you're just always fully committed, and definitely speaks to, the kind of person that he is and the kind of performer that he is. And I think it's just a tremendous thing. It's a gift to anybody who's making a movie to have somebody like that.
Well, you were able to, I mean, if we look at the voice cast, okay, of all the dogs, I mean, you were able to assemble a pretty fun cast who are all lending their voices to the dogs. So if we just run down the list, I mean, I'm not going to name them all, but we have Jennifer Love Hewitt, Danny Trejo, Rob Schneider, Jerry O'Connell, what was the process like in gathering all of these names to voice animals? I imagine, were you guys like just throwing darts out at various casting agencies and seeing,
I wouldn't say we were
which
throwing
ones
darts
responded, or
no, not exactly like that. I mean, no, I would say that there's, these are, well, again, Brandon is somebody who is, this movie is like his baby, and he's not, and these characters, even the dog voices, like there's no element of them that's not like, these are fleshed out characters that he, even before I read the script, he had love for these characters, right? So I think there's another element of like, we're going to wait and get the right people for every single role. And there were times where, we actually had some other exciting names. It wasn't because they weren't right for the role or because, but it was just a matter of like, there'd be a conflict here or a conflict there. But if that would happen, like let's say we had someone perfect for one of the animals that was like, oh my God, that's such a great one, and then something falls through with that. We're not taking the next person. I mean, there's a whole long process of like this, of very carefully mixing and matching and finding the right person. And I can't explain to you the hours of calls and lists and things that we went through just finding, because, you can go through your dream cast, right? And then some people might not be available. Some people may not be interested, whatever it is. But it's not easy just to go down. Like even putting the dream cast list together is not easy, right? So it's just like, it was fun though. I mean, I was very excited about the group of voice actors that we put together for this. I can't explain to you how much fun that was as well. And I don't think there's a miscast in not one single voice is miscast. So it's pretty awesome, and pretty exciting to work with those guys. You sometimes don't even realize, what it is, like, you may be aware of the talents of certain performers and actors, and aware of of good things that you think that they've done, but you sometimes don't even realize like how absolutely good they are until you kind of start to see the things that they can pull off and do and bring to the table, and then you start to go, wow, like that's, there's some really fun stuff. So I mean, I've never had to do it to this extent. I've obviously done, done commercials and things where you're doing ADR and you're doing sort of voice acting, but like this was on a whole new level. And it was a lot of fun. It's a really interesting process, There were things like with Rob Schneider, for example, where he would do things that would end up having me go back into the edit and re-edit the movie because he was just like riffing on certain things and moments and improvising things, and then you're like, well, that's got to be in the movie, but it's not cut that way yet, and you got to make the so you go back into the edit and you start to create these moments that are really fun. So that kind of thing. It's awesome.
Well, I mean, this has been an absolute pleasure. Obviously, I want to be respectful of your time, but I'm really looking forward to this film because, I mean, obviously being a fan of Mr. Lundgren, but this is finally an opportunity where I can watch one of his films with my kids. I mean, at this point, the only films I've really been able to show my kids are Masters of the Universe, obviously.
Yeah.
The Expendables actually isn't too bad, but this is one that they can watch with Dad. So I'm looking forward to it on that end.
That's great. Well, I think they'll enjoy it. I hope they do. If they don't, I'll give them Dolph's number and they can take it up with him.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, it's always a pleasure chatting with you, but I really do appreciate you coming back and letting me talk your ear off for.
I appreciate it, Sean. Thank you so much. You're awesome. I really love what you do over there, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak again. You're a class act. I'm very glad that you do contact me for this. So thank you so much, man, and thank you for having me on.